Welcome to the Teaching with Technology Brown Bag Escape the Ordinary, turning a Canvas lesson into an interactive mission. Your hosts today are Dr. Linda Macaulay and Mr. Brandon Henry. To start off the presentation is Mr. Henry.
Welcome, everybody. Here you can see our session goals for today. Okay, go ahead and get started. So what brought about this brown bag was Linda and I were tasked with showing the ETI team some new techniques to learn both Panopto and Canvas. And rather than have the team watch us stand up and demonstrate the software for the afternoon, we decided to see if we could make it fun through gamification. So we led our colleagues in a narrative tale about a corrupted video of alien footage while leading them through a gamified escape room style Canvas adventure. And we'll talk more about that later in this presentation. So let's first talk about the difference between game-based learning and gamification. With game-based learning, that's where you're generating a self-contained game to model real-world context and concepts. Whereas gamification uses game-like elements such as points, leaderboards, badges, and narratives in a non-game setting. So, for example, game-based learning would be the game Monopoly to learn about concepts of money and real estate, or Oregon Trail to learn about the concepts of resource management and decision-making. So one type of gamification is an escape room. We created an escape room activity to incorporate some of those engagement elements using the functionality of Canvas to create sort of an adventure for the ETI staff when we had a full day of professional development on campus. So with gamification, the underlying activities kind of remain the same. So quizzes, activities, worksheets. However, the outcome results in an award-based system using clues, puzzles, and things like that to complete the room. Other types of gamification can include items such as points, badges, or leaderboards to allow the user to track and complete tiered objectives. But since those aren't really available in the core Canvas, we won't really focus on that today. So compared to traditional learning, where a student might study a topic for an extended period and not know if they're really understanding the concept until they are tested on it, gamification provides immediate feedback and produces dopamine hits to help kind of motivate learning and help visualize progress. There's actually a study out of Ohio that tracked 1,000 students for over 3 years and found a 25% increase in average grades when learning with gamification methods. So what are the learning theories behind why gamification is effective? We'll talk about those in the following slides here with some of the theories behind gamification. So the first one is self-determination theory. And the core concept of this was developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And this theory kind of proves that people are wired to stay motivated when they feel in control, capable, and connected to others. So we can tap into this by giving students meaningful choices, including indicators to show mastery and building a sense of community through collaborative challenges. Next one is experiential learning theory. And this is grounded in the work of David Kolb and John Dewey. This framework is all about the idea that the best way to actually internalize knowledge is by doing it, messing it up and reflecting on it, trying it again. So gamification makes this happen because games are essentially low stakes, rapid fire feedback loops where students can test a theory and then see the results instantly and then try again. Next, we have flow theory. So how many of you have been in that state of really deep focus where you're so immersed in a task that you completely lose track of time? The goal with game mechanics is to keep students kind of right in that sweet spot where they're balancing the difficulty of the challenge with their growing skill level so they never really get bored or overwhelmed. Next, we have constructivism. This is pioneered by Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. This theory reminds us that students aren't blank slates to pour facts into. They have to actively build their own understanding. Anyone that's worked with ETI has probably heard us use the term scaffold or scaffolding. Gamified elements kind of act as that scaffold for this, giving students the right hints, clues, and interactive environments to solve tough problems and construct new mental models. So now that we've kind of touched on the theories, let's get into the gaming bit and how do we fit that into our lessons? So one type of game, as we explained, is an escape room. And there are really only three things that you need to make an escape room with Canvas. To make it more engaging, you should start with the story. Most importantly, you need to have your content, obviously. And then, as with any type of escape room, puzzles and clues help engage the student. So let's talk about the narrative. The powerful narrative turns your Canvas escape room from just another online activity into an engaging, meaningful, and memorable learning experience. It's kind of the glue that holds all the tasks together and fuels that curiosity. Physical escape rooms usually have a theme to keep the participants engaged, whether you're trying to escape a madman's castle or, as a most recent example, my daughter and some girls from her team just did one called Escape the Schoolyard. And they had to escape a classroom, which then took them into like a locker area and then into a playground setting. So in our Canvas escape room, we decided to place our users into the role of agents trying to decode a message from an alien. Now, as I mentioned previously, since we are an educational institute, the content is the main focus. So we want the students to learn the material. So when you're working on this, try not to get too caught up in the details of creating an ultimate game and forget to focus on why they're doing the activity. The game is really for engagement, but if they're, more focused on speeding through to win points, kind of the point is lost on the escape room. With any physical escape room, the user must complete some sort of a puzzle to unlock the next area. And this could be through a variety of ways, but you want to remember to scatter these puzzles and clues kind of throughout your lesson to immerse the user. And Linda's going to show you how to do all of this and how we use these concepts in our escape room. Take her away, Linda.
All right, thanks, Brandon. So now that we have reviewed the theory behind gamification and escape rooms, we're going to take a look at the process of actually solving an escape room from the learner perspective. And we're going to go through this in case you've never done an escape room before, then you'll have a sense of what it feels like to actually do this as a learner. So the steps involved are first, the learners are going to read that intro narrative either on the homepage or on the first page in your escape room. Then they're going to actually learn the content, complete any puzzles along the way, use those clues that they've gathered to complete a quiz correctly. So that's kind of the key, so to speak, in a Canvas escape room. And then repeat that until they have covered all of the content, completed all of the puzzles, found all the clues, and actually escaped the room. So if we take a look at this in Canvas from the student perspective, I'm going to switch tabs here. And because I am a teacher in this course that we used, I'm going to actually switch over to the view as student view, so you really do see it from the student perspective. So I'll click that button. And you'll see that our learners came into a home page that had the mission that they needed to solve. And we gave them kind of a little memo with some graphics. We gave them the narrative, and we actually also used Panopto video that we made using AI with Google Vids. But I'm going to actually play that for you so you can get a sense of what this escape room was and what it was about before we look at it in more detail.
We have traveled far. From the system of Alpha Centauri, we watched your world, your conflicts, your struggle for existence. We have observed you for centuries. Our purpose is clear: build a better world. This technology is unlike anything you have ever conceived.
We have seen what happens when power is not respected.
To ensure this planet reaches its true potential, whether you want it or not. Choice is yours. Embrace our guidance, resist.
The consequences will be unfortunate.
All right, so that sets the scene. And then, since remember, our whole point of this was to do some professional development for our ETI team during a professional development day on advanced and new features, both of editing videos in Panopto and designing in Canvas. So we use this alien mission as our backdrop, but right on the homepage, after they've kind of been immersed in the topic, they are seeing those objectives, right? So that they know what the point is of this escape room and the training that they're about to engage in. And we even wrote the objectives in the theme of the mission, right? Using the alien narrative. So we have a little bit of fun with that. And honestly, we used AI to help us too. So don't be afraid to do that rather than staring at a blank page. All right. So basically what everyone did is they logged into Canvas. We had added them to this course as students so that when they clicked on that course, they would go right to this homepage. And because we did this as a standalone course, we put our introduction here on the homepage. If you're adding a game to an existing course that you are teaching, you're probably going to create a module or several modules where you will create the content for your game all in one place and maybe not necessarily use the homepage, but either way, it can work. So this is what it looked like for our learners. And once they've looked at those objectives, then they scroll down to the bottom and they see where they need to get the content to be able to do the work. So the interesting part about this escape room is that because one of the objectives was to learn how to do some advanced editing features in Panopto, they actually needed Panopto video footage to work with, right? So we had already created a folder in Google Drive where all of that raw footage lived for each person so that they didn't have to spend time gathering it themselves, and they could just dive in to the actual game. And then they'd actually use that footage to be able to create the content that they needed to solve the puzzles and get out of the rooms that we've created. So we gave them those instructions, and then we built the main content in modules. So the directions tell them, start your mission by clicking the modules link in the course navigation where they will start their learning. So we'll do that. Now I have minimized all of our modules here so you can see all the rooms that are in our escape room. So it was made up of 4 rooms. The first room was about Panopto, and then rooms 2, 3, and 4 were about Canvas. And then there was an escape goodie bag at the end, which was kind of the prize if they finished and were able to complete all the missions. Now, if we go into the first room, as the learners would have done, you'll notice, first of all, that it says they have to complete everything. They have to complete all items. But the only thing that's available and clickable at this moment is the first item. And we did this on purpose so that our learners could go through the content in order and actually go through the clues in order as well to escape the room. So we'll go into that first mission for Panopto, and you'll see that this first page sets the stage for the content that they'll be learning. And they have to read it and mark it as done, or they cannot move on. So if your letters get so caught up in the game that they forget that they're here to learn and they just scroll through really fast and click next, they get a note that says, no, this page is part of a module that hasn't been unlocked yet. So it's telling them they have to do the prerequisites before they see the next thing. And it's telling them you must mark it as done in order to see this next page. So if I go back, now I really read the page and I really learn, then mark it as done. Now when I click next, it'll give me the next bit of content. And basically they did this for all the Panopto content. They learned how to do all the editing work that they needed. And then they get presented with their first security checkpoint. Now, in this case, it is a Canvas quiz that they will complete in order to unlock the next room. Now, this was a face-to-face software training, and our team actually had to complete work inside Panopto to do the editing in this security checkpoint, as you can see here in the task instructions. And because they actually had to do something, Brandon was in the room and was able to check their work. And then if they completed it correctly, Brandon gave them the clue, which was the answer they needed to select on this quiz in order to be able to move on. So once they finished this task, they would call Brandon over, he would check it, and if they got it right, he had the answer on a note card, and they could click take the quiz, and then read the question and pick the answer that Brandon showed them, right, on the note card. So I know that this answer is truth. They will submit that quiz, and then if they are correct, they will get to move on. So you can see here it says it was the correct answer. And then they can click next. And now they move on to the next mission, and so on and so forth, so that they could complete this first part, this first room. Now, in our modules, you'll notice that room 1 had multiple missions. So room 1 had 4 different missions. We've only opened up to the second one, but there was a lot more content there. And then once they did that, they've moved on to the other rooms. If they were able to complete everything in the 4 rooms and actually escape, then they would be presented with this escape goodie bag at the very end. And that was basically a list of resources like help guides and websites on Panopto and Canvas that would be helpful if the team ever wanted to use these tools in the future. And also in the goodie bag, we included details on how we made this escape room game so that they had the background for any future projects that we might need to create as the ETI team. Since we are a team of instructional designers and graphic designers, of course, these are kinds of things that, we geek out on, and we would want to have those resources. So this goodie bag was the prize for completion of the escape room. And it is a key element used for motivation and to persevere in the room so that you can escape. And by including these motivational elements, such as a reward or a prize, that's a very essential component of gamification. So now that you've seen it from the student perspective, how did we actually do it? How did we create it? So the steps we engaged in as the teachers of this session were, first, we created that intro narrative and the homepage to hook the learner. Then we created the escape room modules where we included all that content. We continued the theme of the alien piece throughout all the narrative content. And we did use AI to help us write those stories. And then we developed the quiz questions that became the puzzles, where they took the clues they found and solved the puzzles. And then we configured the module requirements and prerequisites so that they had to do things in order and so that they could learn the content in the order that we needed them to. And then last, we published and piloted to make sure it was functioning correctly. So let's take a look at it now from the teacher side of things so you can see where the settings are that made this all happen. So I'm going to switch back to Canvas, and I'm going to leave the student view at this point because I want to go back to teachers. And then I'm going to show you how we did this. So first off, I'm going to go back to the home page. And here it is where we created that narrative and we added the video. So whether you do this on the course homepage or you do it on a separate page within a module, in order to create that content, you're going to use that edit button in the top right. And you're going to put the content in as you wish, keeping in mind that you have all this formatting up here that you're used to seeing, say, in a Google Doc. It's also available in Canvas. So you can change the size of your text. You can use headings. You can format the text, different colors. You can insert images like we did using the special buttons here in the middle. And we even embedded the Panopto video using an embed link as well. When you finish writing your introduction and the objectives and the mission, so to speak, don't forget to click save at the bottom so that all that good work gets preserved. Then we went ahead and we built the module structure where all the rooms were created. So in this case, we had used the plus module button in the top right of your Canvas screen under the modules tool. And then we created these gray headings, which is each one of those is a module, by clicking this plus module for each one. When we click the plus module, you just type in the title that you see here in the gray bar, and then you save it. And now you have your placeholders or your buckets to put all the content. Now you might notice we have an answer key up here. You didn't see that when we were in student view because we have left it unpublished. It was basically our lesson plan and our notes with all our answers to the clues in case we needed to give people hints along the way. So once we have the modules created, we then are going to think about the content, right? And build the content we want our learners to learn, as well as the clues and the story that we're building along the way. So I'm just going to show you room 2 here real quick. This one, the first page, we have them looking at the task, right? So we're setting the stage. What are they about to learn? Again, you create these pages and you just use that edit button in the top in order to add content or edit content on those pages once you create them. And then you want to make sure as you're writing this narrative content that you connect your clues and your content all along, because remember, the whole point here is that they actually learn the content and the narrative is just kind of fun along the way. We did that all the way throughout. And I'm just going to jump to the one page here to show you what one content page looked like. So you can see here, we were teaching them about the accessibility checker in Canvas. So we gave them a help guide that they had to open up to read, and then we wrote the clue. So you might remember that when I showed you the first room in this, that it was a lot of work in Panopto, and the staff were doing things in the Panopto tool. So in that case, the clues were given to them by Brandon when they did it correctly. But for the Canvas content, the clues were embedded within the content. So in this case, the clues here, they had to figure out what the answer was, what the clue was, using the content on the page. So it says when you are creating a content page in Canvas and are formatting the content in the RCE, what is the first heading level number that you can choose in the RCE? That is the first digit of the next clue. And then when you run the accessibility checker in the RCE and fix all of the issues, how many balloons are in the image that is displayed to celebrate? This is the second digit of the 2-digit clue. Write this down. You will need it to solve the puzzle, which is the quiz, at the end of this room. So they had to read that help guide. They had to actually run the accessibility checker on that page that they'd been working on as part of this escape room in order to get those answers. But it was still self-paced. Yes, I was in the room in case anybody needed any help or needed some hints, but ultimately they could do the Canvas components completely on their own. And then we go through and we develop the quiz, which allows them to answer the puzzles, right? To give the clues they found along the way. So in this case, we have in the teacher view, what you see here is the quiz created, but I'm going to go into preview so you can just see the quiz question. And you'll notice that the question says, using the 4 clues given to you throughout this room, as well as this new number set, solve the puzzle using the conversion table below. So if they were doing everything along the way and getting all those clues, they had already gathered. The first clue was 19, the second clue was 8, the third clue was 15, and the fourth clue in that accessibility checker was 23. And then if they combine that with these other numbers, 20, 8, 5, and 13, then they're going to spell a phrase. And if they did it correctly, they should know that the answer is show them, because that's all the numbers. 19 is an S, 8, and so on, right? So we're going to click show them, and I can submit that even as from the teacher view, and you can see that it was, well, I have correct answers are hidden, but you can see they got the 5 points, so they know they would have gotten it right and moved on. And then the last phase, once you've got all the content written, you've got all the quizzes created, is you have to make sure that you set up the requirements and prerequisites so that they go through the content in order and they have to get the clues right in order to move on, right? Because that's what makes it a game and makes it an escape room. So how did we do that? There is a somewhat hidden feature in Canvas modules that you may not have known about before. So hopefully this is some new learning for some folks. You can use this in a regular course too, not just for escape rooms, if you want to control how your learners are going through content. And that is module requirements and prerequisites. And it is hiding underneath the 3 dots to the far right side of the module heading. So look in those gray bars for the 3 dots. And then you're going to click the edit button. And you'll see this panel pop out where the first thing is prerequisites. Now, this is the part that needs to be done before this module would open. So since we're in room 2, and you can see that here because the module name's at the top, what do they need to do before room 2 should be open? Well, the only thing in this case is room 1, so that's why that's the only prerequisite. But notice you can click that button again and add more. And if we look at room 3 or 4, you're going to see they had multiple prerequisites because I wanted them to complete all the previous rooms before they got to the new one. So make sure that has that filled in for everything that came before it. And then the requirements. So requirements has some options, either complete all or complete 1. Now, in the case of an escape room, we do want them to complete everything. So I've toggled it to the first radio button. And I've also checked off they have to do it in order because I want them to collect their clues in order as they go through and we build and scaffold the learning content along the way. So I want them to do it in order. And then I add a requirement by putting every single thing in the list. So if you look here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things in room 2, and I've got 6 boxes here of content that is required. And each one of them has what needs to be done to be considered complete. So you notice that we made the first page of the module mark as done, but then the content pages are just, they have to view the item. It's your choice. You can make it all be mark as done. You can make it all be view the item. We mixed it up a little bit just to make sure they were still paying attention and not just click, 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 click through the content. And then the very last one is the most important one. You got to make sure that you put the quiz in there and put it as score at least, and then put the grade that you will accept in order to unlock the next room. So in this case, it was only that one question. So if they got the one question right, they got 5 points, and then they would be able to move on. Just as a side note, you do not need to list these in order. It doesn't matter how you add them to the list. Once they're in there, it'll just play out in order the way you've done your modules. And just make sure you click save once you're done. And then once we had that all configured for all 4 rooms, then we published everything and pilot tested it. So make sure when you are ready to do this with your learners that everything has these green check marks, all of it, because otherwise they can't see the content. And be especially careful that the module heading itself is green. The ticket I get, even for regular courses, not just for escape room kinds of things, is that things look like this. And the module itself is unpublished, but then everything under it is green, but the learners can't see any of it. So take a look. If I go back to student view, room 1's missing. Starts with room 2. Well, that would be a pretty messed up escape room, right? If we're missing a room. So be careful that you publish everything, including the module heading. Now, I have this answer key module up at the top though. I don't want that published. So let's make sure both of those things, stay unpublished, because I don't want my learners to see the answers without doing the work. And then make sure your course itself is also published. In this case, you're probably doing it in a real course, so no worries there. But always double check either on the home page that you don't see the publish button up here in the top corner, because if you do, you probably need to click the publish button. Or you can also publish it from the course card on your dashboard. So I'll just show you that really quick. Any unpublished course, which will be at the bottom of your dashboard, has a publish button right on them. So if you're ready to publish it, you can also click that and it will publish the course too.
Thank you for watching today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag. You can view all Teaching with Technology Brown Bags on the USU YouTube channel under the full ETI playlist. Have a nice day.